book of Mark, in chapter 8. Mark 8. Get there, if you join me and the others that are already standing. Mark 8. And I'm going to start reading in verse 22. Mark 8 and 22. The Bible says, "And he cometh to Bethsaida. They bring a blind man unto him, and besought him to touch him. And he touched the blind man by the hand, and took the blind man by the hand, and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes, and put hands upon him, he asked him if he saw all. And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. And after that he put his hands again on his eyes, and made him look up, and he was restored, and saw even every man clearly. And he sent him away to his house, saying, Neither go to the town, nor tell it to any in the town. And Jesus went out, and his disciples, to the towns of Caesarea Philippi. And by the way he asked his disciples, saying unto them, Whom do men say that I am? And they said, John the Baptist, but some say Elias, and others one of the prophets. And he said to them, But whom say ye that I am? And Peter answered and said to him, Thou art the Christ. And he charged them that they should tell no man of him. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders and of the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spake that saying openly, and Peter took him and began to rebuke him. And when he had turned about and looked on his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, Get thee behind me, Satan, for thou savourest not the things that be of God, but the things that be of men. When he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said to them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. And whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and this gospel, the same shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? For what shall a man gain in exchange for his soul? Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when his Father cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." Father, we thank you today for me and blessings, Lord. Have your way tonight. Lord, help us. Guide us according to your purpose. Touch my lips. Help me, Lord, that I might say that which you'd have me to say. And oh, touch the ears of those that are here, that they might receive the word. They might understand it. They might grow by it. They might be changed by it. Your glory. In Jesus' precious point in your pray. Amen. You ever heard a preacher preach, and after he got through, you ask yourself, how did he get that from that? You may be that way tonight. I don't know. I began to study, and I read that first section about the blind man, and I sensed the Lord telling me to go on, and I began to read on. And normally I would not group these three things together. Okay, I have preached two of them separately before. You know, there are three different thoughts that are here together. And I sensed the Lord telling me this is one thought. So I began to look at it, and it hit me. And if I was going to preach on this subject, I probably would never come to the scripture. And I've only used the subject in mentioning it before in a message. I've never preached on it. It's something new for me, okay? But the thought that I'm dealing with tonight has to do with your worldview. Not a term you hear a lot in our circles. It is in a broader sense, in broader Christian circles, that they stress the idea of having a Christian worldview. That is a worldview that is centered on Christ or God. And what they're saying, more or less, is that there's a lot of worldview if you want to be plain about it. But you can boil all the other worldviews down to one thought. Because in a Christian worldview, it is God-centered. God is at the core of the worldview that we should have. But all other worldviews have man at the center. It is, by the way, basically humanism. When you have man at the center, that's called humanism. And basically all other worldviews, even other worldviews that have other religious thoughts wrapped to them, it is ultimately built around man. It's man at the center. The center of our worldview is God. On that worldview, there is also the fact that God created, which means that we have a purpose. On the other worldview, it's evolution, which there is no purpose behind it. It just happened. Over in this worldview over here, there is not only God created, but there is original sin, there is salvation, there is eternity, and over there is ending. When you die, you die. That's it. In this worldview, Christian worldview, in this God-centered worldview, I'm going to cheat here a little bit. The focus is on being holy. This morning, God is holy, 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 holy. And as he says, be ye holy as he is holy. The focus is on being holy. Over here, in the man-centered worldview, the focus is on being happy. You ever hear that? This is what makes me happy? The focus is on being happy. I'm going to tell you, there's times growing up that what I needed was the thing that didn't make me happy. It made me very unhappy. Okay? But it was helping make me holy. And in that center, in that God-centered focus, there is being holy. And by the way, in being holy, then you are made whole, because you cannot be holy without God, and you cannot be whole without God in your life. Okay? And ultimately, in the God-centered thought, it's a God life. We live by God's rules. And over here in the man-centered worldview, it is my life, and I live by my rules. You ever hear that? This is my life. I live the way I want to. That's a secular, that is a humanistic worldview. Man at the center. God, if he ever comes into view, is far from the center. I mentioned that because that's really, in some sense, what I saw in this. And you might think, well, Brother John, maybe some of it, but really? Bear with me. I want you to know, there's three things I want you to understand. There's three sections here. There's three things I want you to understand. But each one of these thoughts has two sides to it. I want to, by the way, we've been doing this the whole time. If we get the map turned where you can see it, they have left over here Magdala and have gone up, and now they're at Bethsaida at the top of the Sea of Galilee. Okay? We're going to move the Sea of Galilee down a little bit, okay? Caesarea Philippi, where he winds up in the second part of the fall, is up here, okay? There's a lake in here smaller than Sea of Galilee, and above it is Caesarea Philippi. So when they come to Bethsaida at the top of the Sea of Galilee, they go north. And a lot of what happens then coming up is right through there somewhere, okay? So they come to Bethsaida, and he's brought a man that's blind. I don't see where it says that the blind man wanted to see Jesus. I really, what I kind of see in a sense is somebody wanting to see a miracle. That's really what I see. They found someone who's blind, they bring him to him and say, make him see. We won't see this. And so Christ took him by the hand. If you read the latter part of the section, you understand that he took him by the hand, led him out of town, and away from the people. They didn't get to see it. Okay? And he took them out away from the people. And the Bible says there that he spit on his eyes. How many want somebody to spit in your eyes? He spit on his eyes and touched him and asked what he saw. And he said, I see men as trees. In other words, I look out and nothing's clear. That could be a man, it could be a tree. It's not clear. And then he touches him and tells him to look up. And then he asks him what he said, and then he can see everything clearly. Okay? I'm going to tell you something. This is a little bit abstract here, okay? But I want you to understand something. In a man-centered worldview, everything is fuzzy. You can't see clearly. There's no clear understanding in anything. In a man-centered worldview, when Christ fed on his eyes, he used natural elements, as you will, and he was left unclear. But when Christ had him look up, when the focus became on heaven, and the focus became on God, when God was made center, he became clear. It's somewhat abstract, but understand, that's what I saw here. In the men-centered viewpoint, everything is fuzzy. It's unclear. You got more questions than answers. When it is God-centered, when it's God-centered, it's clear. So let me tell you that your worldview affects how you see. You're looking at something with man-centered eyes, it is fuzzy. You're looking at something through God-centered eyes, it is clear. Okay? Boys, y'all need to sit back and listen, okay? The second part of this, starting in verse 27, it says that there that Christ was then dealing with his, talking to his disciples. They had gone up towards Caesarea Philippi, and on the way, he begins to talk to them. He says, who do men say that I am? And some say, well, and they give a variety of different prophets that he might be. By the way, in a man-centered worldview, all Christ is a prophet, a good man. That's all he is. In a God-centered worldview, Christ is, as Peter says, the Christ. Thou art Christ, the Son of the living God. As a result, how you see this, by the way, you can say that he's the Christ and sometimes not respond to it in that God-centered viewpoint, but respond to him in the man-centered. Watch this. He then charged, they tell no man, and then he began to teach them some things. He told them how he had to suffer. You know, when we sometimes think about it from our standpoint, when we're looking at Christ on the cross and all the things he suffered, when we're looking at it from that side, we tend to not understand what happened. But when we look at it from God's standpoint, when we look at it biblically, we understand that this had to happen. And Christ began to tell them that he had to suffer at the hands of the scribes and the Pharisees. He had to die. He had to rise again. And it says there he began to talk to them from that point on about these things. Later on, you'll find where that on the Mount Transfiguration, the next chapter, very next chapter, you find on the Mount Transfiguration, and Christ told them after the Peter, James, and John that when they saw what happened to him with Moses and Elias, he says, you know, don't tell anyone until after the resurrection. And the very next verse says, they talked with each other about what that meant, the resurrection. What resurrection? What are you talking about? But he began talking to them openly about the fact that he had to die, that he had to be risen again. And then note that Peter comes to him and says, begins to rebuke Christ. No. That's not what we signed up for. No. He's approaching what he knows about Christ from this man-centered thought pattern. He's not thinking about salvation, the need for spiritual salvation. He's thinking about a physical salvation, a Messiah who would come and throw off the bonds of Rome. And Christ rebukes him and says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." He rebukes Peter's opinions, his thoughts, and says that this man-centered viewpoint is satanic. Okay? This man-centered viewpoint is satanic. He goes in the third part. Now we've looked at the fact that the worldview will affect the way you see the world. It will affect the way you see Christ. All right? It will also affect the way you see life. And that is the next portion, starting in verse 34. And when he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said unto them, "Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Now, by the way, he called the disciples, he called the people around him. He's called whosoever, okay? But not all answers. That's part of this message this morning, this message too. Not all answers. Now what he does here is he begins to lay out a thought through these verses. And I want you to note them. Because there's two paths that are given here. You can either follow Jesus or you can follow yourself. You can either have a God-centered worldview or you can have a man-centered worldview. You can either follow Jesus or you can follow self. And that's what he says. He goes, "Whosoever shall come after me, let him deny himself and pick up his cross and follow me." In other words, to follow Jesus is to deny self. To follow self is to deny Jesus. The Bible says, "Don't make it have two masters." He'll either serve the one and hate the other, or he'll hold to the one and despise the other. If we follow Christ, there is a personal cross involved. There's a cross that you have to carry, pick up his cross. Listen, you have your own burden to bear. I'm going to tell you that if you follow self, there's a burden there also, and it's much heavier than the one that you're being asked to carry when you follow Jesus. Pick up your yoke and follow me. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. That's the misquote. I messed it up, but anyway, it's close. Verse 35, "Or whosoever shall save his life shall lose it, but whosoever shall lose his life for my sake in the Gospels, the same shall save it." And you come to this part about the idea of life. If this life is so dear, if life here on earth is so dear, and you're seeking so hard to save this life, how to say it? To get the most out of it for yourself, you're losing it. If in this life you're giving it away because you're following Jesus, if you're not seeking to save your life, you're following Jesus, and you'll save it. We don't think of it that way. We think that it is very important that we follow after, that we chase after this life and try to pursue it and yet this is not the life that really matters. This life should be lived for the next life to come. Then he asks a question about profit. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? I'm going to tell you something. No matter what I accomplish or gain in this life, I'll never gain the world. That's such. I'm not in any pursuit of it. Okay? But I have been given something more valuable than the world has to offer. I have been given the blood of Jesus Christ to cleanse me from all sin. I have profit in that. That profit saves my soul. But if I pursue the pleasures of this life, that's my men-centered pursuit of life. And taking God out of the way, and I'm going to pursue what I want to do. And I will lose my soul. And there's nothing you can give in exchange for it to buy it back. It's gone. The only thing that will purchase that soul is the blood of Jesus Christ. And then verse 38, I want you to note this right here as well. And whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he cometh in the glory of his Father with his holy angels. In other words, if he's not important here to you, you live your life in a way of pushing him aside and trying to hide him from the world and being ashamed of him. And there's people who claim to be Christians who do that. They hold him in a shadow. They put their light under a bushel, if I put it that way. He says, you don't have an eternity with me. If you're ashamed of me, I'll be ashamed of you when I come back. You got two worldviews, basically. You have a God-centered worldview where He is the center of your life. He answers all your questions. It affects the way you see the world. It affects the way you see Christ. It affects the way you see life. Or you have a man-centered one. It also affects the way you see this world. It also affects the way you see Christ. It also affects the way you see this life. There's only two. Yeah, you can take this one over here and you can fray it apart and take it and apply a lot of different thoughts to it, but ultimately it boils down to just two. Either God's at the center of your life or you're at the center of your life. It can't be both. So the question I guess I would have for you is, what is your worldview? Who's on your throne? Let's do a song. Everyone sing.